Consider supporting Archaeosoup on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Link available in the video description. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to another Aspects of Archaeology. Now today we're going to be looking at pottery. But first of all we must ask, why is pottery so interesting to archaeologists? It has been said that for the most part archaeologists only deal with rubbish, if only that were true. You see, of that rubbish it tends only to be the most durable things which survive, such as bones, teeth, metal and rocks. And of course the subject of today's video, pottery. But all of this only accounts for a very small percentage of what would have been a living world. Excavations like Coppergate in York, where even socks were preserved, are extremely rare. And thus archaeologists tend to be very precious about the things which do survive, collecting every fragment of broken pottery, assigning teams to sift and sort through those finds. Every observation is important, and even the most minuscule of measurements can be logged. And then a whole realm of specialists are ready to identify and interpret these precious kernels of durable rubbish. So archaeologists love pottery because it is a durable cultural artifact which can be found and even reconstructed. So pottery accounts for a large proportion of finds on archaeological excavations, and you'd be amazed at the different things archaeologists can do with pottery. Probably the simplest analysis of pottery is to look at it, to examine its design and any patterns upon its surface. In this way, classifications are built up, different types of pot, and possibly different uses for those different pots. And from these observations, elaborate timelines can be constructed as to when certain pots became fashionable or went out of use. For example, identifying a wine container by style immediately tells us something about a site. Another crucial observation is how well or what technology was used to make a pot. A piece of pottery can be broadly dated and placed in the world by examining how it was made. Was it constructed like a sculpture from a single or several pieces of clay? Or was it spun on a potter's wheel? Such technology was developed in different parts of the world at different times, and thus can help to date pottery. In other cases, observations as to the very fabric of the pot can be extremely useful. As seen in a previous Aspects of Archaeology, the technique of thermoluminescent dating can help to date a pot using the very fabric of the pot itself, and thus help to date an entire site. In some cases, so-called thin section analysis or ceramic petrology can identify the source of the material which made the pot. By examining a sample of the pot under a high-powered microscope, it is possible to observe the different quantities of geological material in the clay. This acts as a geological fingerprint or postcode, allowing us to identify where this particular mixture is likely to have come from. Occasionally, pottery may still have a residue upon it of what it once contained. And, once again, through careful observations and meticulous work, archaeologists are able to reconstruct ancient concoctions, from mead to medicines. Some archaeologists study the aftermath of parties when pots have been broken or otherwise discarded. You see, often important events will use and consume vast amounts of ceramics and pottery. Curiously, when the remnants of these meetings are reconstructed, sometimes pieces are missing. Sometimes lots of pieces are missing. For some archaeologists, these missing pieces have been taken away as mementos, evidence of the bond created when the pot was whole. And finally, fingerprints, the ubiquitous individual identifier. Some archaeologists try to use fingerprints found on clay pots to trace long-distance trade networks around the world. Still not potty about pottery, eh? Well, here are some excellent examples. When an archaeologist excavates a beaker, this can be extremely useful for interpreting a site. For a start, we know that these beakers spread across Europe at some point during the Bronze Age. Whether this meant a movement of people or simply a movement of an idea, we know that beakers came to define people in life and in the grave. There are beakers of different sizes and different levels of intricacy, but upon some beakers there is residue of a very particular substance. That substance is hemp mixed with a form of ale, a mild hallucinogen possibly used in ceremonies. So, with the mere presence of a beaker, we begin to focus in on the world it came from. Stylistically, an Anglo-Saxon pot immediately dates a site in Britain to the post-Roman world. Fragments of this pottery are fairly easily identified, and the quality of their manufacture does vary from place to place. This variation led many researchers to assume that pottery was locally made in kilns of varying quality. However, thin section analysis, or ceramic petrology, examining the very fabric of the pots under a microscope, has brought this assumption into question. Rather than piecemeal domestic production, it seems that much of this pottery was being made by regional specialists in Britain and traded to surrounding areas. When an archaeologist digs a Roman site, they always prepare to gather pottery. Roman excavations frequently unearth so-called Samian ware, a high-quality, high-status pot with a distinctive glossy red finish. Samian ware is diagnostic, but so too is the range of coarse wares which often accompany Samian ware on a Roman excavation. Roman pottery has long been studied, and as a result is probably the most comprehensively understood range of ancient pottery in the world. This vast catalogue has led to a growing interest in the impressions of fingerprints frequently found on these baked clay goods. From floor tiles to personal seals, archaeologists are beginning to ask if they can identify individual workshops and trade networks by the fingerprints left upon their goods. And rather pleasingly, occasionally we get other impressions from everyday life in the Roman period. So, pottery, by virtue of its very fabric, is often found on archaeological sites around the world. And far from being just broken rubbish, to an archaeologist, these objects can offer insight into the way people lived in the past, sometimes in a very direct way by analysing what the pot or vessel contained, and in other ways by inferring social relationships, simply by analysing how this pottery was treated. This plethora of techniques has been developed over many years and continues to grow. So, pottery, one man's rubbish is another man's treasure trove indeed. So, that's been pottery. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you found this video interesting and or useful. Feel free to comment below. Of course, please do subscribe to the channel by pushing the button just above. And also as well, it's well worth tracking down our Facebook page at the moment, because often things that don't make it onto the YouTube channel go onto the page instead. Just go onto Facebook, type in Archaeosoup Productions and click like. And if you are a Twitterer, the Twitter, which is at Archaeosoup, which is soup with a 0, the Twitter account is basically following the Facebook page. So anything that's posted on there is posted onto Twitter concurrently. So, until next time, thank you very much.